was just getting fired up.
Before we get going, I want to make sure we're actually streaming, right? So do a little housekeeping here, because I've noticed a couple of times where it actually hasn't started. So let me go check LinkedIn real quick and click to join.
Jesse, is that an actual dog behind you, or is that a background?
No, it's an actual dog. I I keep him in here just to prove that it's not a background.
Oh, I love it.
All right, so I think the LinkedIn is going, but let's go because we're tech geeks here, and it actually works. So let's check. You guys, banter away, right? Because
when we were talking about Jesse's dog, I would talk.
Yeah,
let's jump into intros, right? Because the longer we can go, the better. Brad, you want to start it off?
Start off.
All right, we're good. We're good. I see us live.
We're there.
You guys, banter away, right? All right, live. Woohoo!
Yeah, we like to keep it really informal around here, Brad.
All right. So, I had this really great intro video. I was
cool.
I was pretty psyched because I built that thing, and it took me weeks to think about it and 5 minutes to build it in Canva. So
there you go.
Anyways, we're what, 2 minutes in now. Welcome to this week's edition of Team Tim and Uncle Jesse. We gotta figure something out with that, buddy. So anyways, we're really excited. We got an amazing guest here with us today, Mr. Brad Gross himself, the MSP lawyer. If you're an MSP and you haven't talked to him yet and you need to get your act together, you better go talk to him. Anyways, without further ado, I'm Tim Golden, founder of Compliance Scorecard, here to bring you guys fun and exciting legal mumbo jumbo and all kinds of good conversation. Hey, Tim, say hello. How are you, my friend?
Tim Schnurr, Cavello, the U.S. channel lead for Cavello. Cavello is a sensitive data scanning and classification tool. You probably don't know what that means, and if you don't, come check us out. So
awesome. And Jesse, of course, my friend.
Welcome to Brad. I'm excited for this conversation today. I'm Jesse Miller with Power PSA Consulting. As you all know, I help MSPs build, scale, and profit from security programs.
Awesome. And without further ado, the man of the hour. Hello.
I'm the man of the hour. Good.
You are, Brad. You're a little fuzzy. I don't know. Do I need to put my beer goggles on or something? But
I don't know. Maybe it's I closed everything that I could think of that's taking up bandwidth, so I apologize for that. Do I still look fuzzy?
You probably forgot the Hulu, right?
I'm trying to watch my shows at the same time. I can multitask.
We all got to catch up on the morning show, right? So
yeah.
Anyways, introduce yourself. Tell us a little bit about yourself, Brad.
So, hi, everyone. For those of you who don't know me, Brad Gross, attorney for MSPs nationwide. I have been representing MSPs for a long time. That's why I have this gray hair here. See, a long time, 22 years, thousands of MSPs, well over 6,000 MSPs. I wrote a book on this stuff. Literally wrote a book on that. And I started programming on a TRS-80. This is not a fake background, by the way. This is a real background, and that thing works. That's where I started 44 years ago, just to give you a frame of reference. That's where I'm coming from.
Awesome. Hey, Brad, try this. Turn your camera off and then turn it back on.
Okay.
Maybe turn it off and on again.
Can you please reboot? All right, let's see if this helps a little bit better. No, still a little blurry. Well, so all right, we'll just have to deal with blurry Brad. Can that be your nickname today? Oh my God, did I just say that?
With that,
yeah. All right, so welcome, and we're talking about legal mumbo jumbo today. We're talking about where is the first place that MSPs start when they are building their managed service offering. I think I know where they need to start, but probably well before. Oh, wait a minute, Jesse, what do you always say? What's that 3-letter acronym that begins with what?
I don't know. ICP. Oh, yeah.
You need to identify your customers and all that fun
Right.
stuff. But I would think that Brad might have something well before you're even getting down this path, right, Brad? Where do we start?
Where do you start? Well, you start at the beginning. And where is the beginning? So the beginning is, as anyone who has seen me speak before or talk to me, my mantra is you start with your agreement, because every MSP and its customer, that relationship is a creature of contract. Okay. It's not a creature of regulation. It's not a creature of statute. It's a creature of contract. So if your contract is no good, your relationship's not going to be good. And when things aren't good, you know what happens? They call lawyers, and that's expensive. So we're just going to try to keep everyone away from the lawyers and focused on what they do best, their business.
You know, that's a great point. And, you know, I just was, as you were talking about that, I was thinking about, you know, yeah, we have a good contract and maybe we do have a good contract, but how do you see what's some pragmatic steps that MSPs can take? Let's say they have their MSA all in line, and we'll talk about that later. But if they do, how do you communicate that to your client? How do you level set expectations with what's actually on the paper? What are some pragmatic ways MSPs can do that through the deal process and through the sign-up
So
process?
I'm going to answer that question, but how's my video so far? Should I try to restart it?
Just try to restart. Tim will let you back in. Maybe we can get you.
So it's like a cliffhanger is what it is. It's a cliffhanger.
Yeah.
All right.
You know what? It's fine. It's 5 o'clock some Friday, someplace. I mean, we all got. I got my cup working. I'm good with pushing through if blurry Brad is too.
No, but I can refresh. Let me refresh.
Okay.
We'll leave the cliffhanger for about 30 seconds. Okay.
All right, get out.
Oh,
so
awesome.
sorry, everybody.
This here, can you read me? Yeah, I mean
we're having a little bit of technical difficulty.
Hang on, show them the shirt. We're gonna be.
Oh yeah, dude.
Oh yeah.
All right, so
Woo.
while we're waiting for Brad to rejoin us, right? While we're waiting. Oh, look, that's a little better.
Right? We're good.
Oh my gosh, I can. Hey, wait, you do actually have gray down here.
I do. You know what I think the problem was? The setting. It was set to like 720 as opposed to full high def.
Oh,
hey,
okay. That a technology guy that didn't check the settings before he went on air.
Hey, you know what? You rebooted, you came back, all is well in the world of cyber, right?
I don't think they had video settings on that little machine behind you, so we'll forgive you for that one.
Yeah, that's right. That's where I started. You have to cut with some leeway. Absolutely. So anyway, we were discussing about how to manage customers' expectations. Was that the question?
Yes.
All right. So managing expectations, I could tell you, is perhaps the biggest goal. It's the holy grail of relationships between MSPs and their customers, because the most, without question, the most vicious, belligerent, and expensive battles between MSPs and their customers always relate to mismanaged expectations. They just do. Okay, it's almost never the case where an MSP fails to provide or facilitate a service. Instead, it always has to do with an MSP and a customer not aligning with their communication. Right? Misalignment.
Yeah.
That's where it happens. So how do we fix that? That's something we could talk about right now. Is that what you want to know?
Yeah, I think sure. Yeah, I'd like to get into that, and I do want to talk about MSAs too. But from your perspective, let's say we have our MSA all set up properly. We've laid out, we cover this, we don't cover that, and how do you recommend walking the customer through that line by line, creating an explainer with TLDR bullet points, or does that get you into legal trouble because you have another document now that has some sort of legal weight to the contract? These are all questions that I've had over the years.
All right. So good question. Here's the deal. To answer that question, I'm going to back up just one step. In my view, the MSA is not the document that has services in it. It does not mention services. It doesn't mention fees. It mentions none of that.
Right.
Instead, your MSA is the equivalent of the rules that you see when you walk into a beach club, right? It says no loud music, right? No diving, no glass bottles at the pool. It doesn't say, hey, Jesse, if you're here, no running.
Right.
No, it just says no running. Who are they talking to? who's ever reading the sign. So that's your MSA. And where do you put the services that you're talking about, the expectations, the deliverables? In my view, those go in quotes or insert, you could call it a statement of work proposal, right? I call them quotes.
Yeah.
That's the document that changes. That's the document that you need to go through with your customer, not the MSA. If you go through the MSA with your customer, they may or may not sign it, the same way that if you actually read the EULAs of the things that you're agreeing to, you might not install the software. In my view, it's not that you're hiding the MSA, but I don't think that you should be going through it line by line. Instead, you offer the MSA to them, post it online, say it's there. Now let me tell you what I'm going to deliver.
Yeah.
So I was gonna talk about that a little bit. So when we went through redoing our MSAs with Brad, right, and with his team, right, amazing, awesome, affordable. When we did that with Brad, I took my MSA and I put it on our website, right? So I that is the first thing that we have signed. You know, we talk a lot about doing a risk assessment or doing some kind of evaluation with our client, you know, before we start building an agreement, before we do anything. And so I don't want to install anything on their network. I don't want to do any scans of their stuff. As an MSP, I don't want to touch anything in their environment without an MSA in place. Right. And that's how part of our sales cycle. And we would send them like, here's our MSA, go look at it. And I'll send you the DocuSign so you can actually sign it. We get that in place first. And it is always there for you to look at. But we do that first so that it puts us at a little bit less of a risk if we're going to install some kind of scanner or some kind of thing to look at their stuff. We have an agreement in place. Yeah. And then from there, as Brad said, now we can build a scope of work.
I think that's a great point, and I'll tell you why, to expand on what you just said. You know, sometimes MSPs think, well, I don't need an MSA in place. I don't need an agreement in place. I'm only doing, and then fill in the blank, whatever it is, right? The problem is that an MSP could be accused of wrongdoing or could have the finger pointed at them, regardless of the size or cost of the project. Sometimes you see MSPs say, well, it was free. So since it's a free project, I didn't have them sign anything. Free does not eliminate liability, right? Yeah. Small projects does not mean, you know, invulnerability to liability. You could load up a basic scanning tool just to take an audit of a system, trigger a crypto virus.
Yeah.
You didn't do anything wrong, and it would have been triggered eventually anyway, right? But you did it. And if that happens, you're going to wish to hell that you had an agreement in place. For sure.
Absolutely. And I think that boils down to like the risk, right? The business risk to us as an MSP and to the client. Like the last thing you want to do is blow something up at your client. What if, I mean, we all as MSPs are smart and we think we know it all, but you know, sometimes some of our tools are broken. Sometimes some of our scripts are just bad. And so if you don't have that foundational piece of documentation that says, hey, we're going to do the best we can, and we're going to get our MSA from Brad appropriately and try to help mitigate some of that risk in the very beginning, you're going to open yourself up to a major can.
Go back to that, Tim. The best that you can. And I think that's this concept of like best efforts with outsourced IT, outsourced security, MSPs, MSSPs, whatever you want to call them. Brad, what are your thoughts on that? And like, there's a lot of a lot of regulatory hype on, MSPs being liable. Like, I guess, where's the line? And like, kind of walk through it. Like, just walk us through a conversation when you talk to, a typical MSSP. Like,
sure. So first of all, I think that MSPs or MSSPs, one is obviously more security bent than the other. I think what they need to do, is have a discussion with their customers about the fact that there are some services that they provide directly, but for the most part, they don't provide services. They facilitate or resell services. And that is a very important point because an MSP cannot offer its end user, its customer, anything more than it's receiving from a third-party solution provider upstream. And a lot of customers don't understand that. They think that an MSP or an MSSP is providing the service itself. So if something goes wrong or something doesn't work as it should, the MSP is responsible. The MSP should fix it. And it's usually because, and it goes back to the mismanaged expectations, it's usually because the MSP has not explained to its customer, or delineated, I should say, to its customer what it actually provides, what it facilitates, and how issues related to each of those categories will be handled.
Yeah. And
that's a big difference, right? In-house IT and outsourced IT, right? Like it sounds like there's a big difference there, at least in those initial expectations. So
yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Oh, did we lose
I
Jesse?
remember that was a big struggle with one of the first MSPs that I worked in. Oh, can you hear me? No? Hello?
We're good.
I hear you.
you're good. You just got to lag.
You can hear me?
Just push through.
Okay.
I can still see the dog
All right.
behind you. He's awesome.
Must be the dog. All right, just quickly, it was an issue that we ran into at one of the MSPs I worked at years ago, redoing a big piece of our MSA to include that we ran into some problems that we didn't specify that the EULA of the end provider must be adhered to by the client. And so that was a big miss on our part. Yeah. And we learned the lesson the hard way. So I think that's, I see that in a lot of contract standard these days. So I think that's good.
You know, you see it a lot, and where I'm really seeing it quite a bit is in the provision of infrastructure or platform as a service. MSP is providing Azure, let's say, or some other platform as a service, not explaining to the customer that it's a consumption-based platform, and that if the customer messes with the configs up there, they may actually change, right, how things are billed and so forth. You know, they have to, MSPs in general have to do a better job of explaining their place in the industry, their place in the relationship, and where third-party providers sit in this configuration, for sure.
So if I had to think about it, right? So as an MSP, right? I mean, I don't want to say that we are basically value-added resellers, but in a sense, we kind of are, because a lot of the things that we do to operationalize ourselves as an MSP are selling tools. Now, what you're bringing up, Brad, actually is a lot of things that we talk about in compliance, and that is, you know, third-party risk, fourth-party risk, all the way up and down the chain of like the risks associated with using tools. We're not going to talk about the big 4th of July one and that humongous vendor that had something happen that a lot of MSPs use, and that flowed all the way back to the end client, right? Who is responsible in that case? Is it the vendor? Is it the MSP? Is it the client? You know, that big thing that happened on that 4th of July weekend a couple of years ago, we won't talk about the big K that happened, but like this second, third, fourth party risk thing, like it's real. It's happened in our space. And so how do we deal with that? You know, we have an MSA, great, but what's the next piece?
Well, so your point is a good one, right? That it happened then, but it's going to happen again, right? I'm not saying to the same vendor to which it happened in the past, maybe not, but things like this happen periodically, right? Every couple of years you hear about some major thing and it makes the news for a while. And the question of responsibility and who's liable is the fodder on which plaintiffs' lawyers feed. Okay. And we want to avoid that. We want to avoid having all this stuff ironed out by plaintiffs' lawyers that are charging $500, $600, $700, $800 an hour to talk about it. And they're going to talk about it very slowly, very slowly. So they're going to, they'll talk about other things, their family and so on. So I think that your MSA is important. And while I agree with you that you want to walk the line of making it clear that there are some things you facilitate and then there are others you provide, but you don't just want to simply say, I'm one big value added solution. That's all I am. You don't want to do that. But at the same time, you want to err in if you're going to err on either side, you're going to want to err on the side of making it clear that in many cases you really are a value-added reseller, and that's okay because they can't get these services directly anyway. It's not like you're coming in and they could say, "What am I using you for? I could just go buy it directly." They can't.
Exactly.
But
Points.
that's one way to do it. Now, well, that's part of the solution. There's another part, and
Let's put you back over here then.
There we go. Yes, I take up the screen from my big strategy. It's a strategy that I came up with about 1.5 years ago or so. And what was happening, what I found, is that MSPs were in a quandary. They were not managing expectations of their customers correctly. So what they were doing was they were taking one of two tactics. They were either trying to put as much information about their services and what they do and what the limitations are in the quote, in the statement of work, which created a 50-page statement of work. And that became an obstacle. Or they went the other way. They figured, you know what? If I don't say anything, if I don't make a promise, I can't be held to it. So they went the other way and came up with like a 1 or 2 page quote, which really provided little direction and guidance. And that caused a problem. As I said earlier, mismanaged expectations. The customer expects things that it's not going to get. Mm-hmm. So how do we manage expectations? And the answer that I came up with, oh, wait, I got to go. I'm out of time. Nice speaking with you. All right. Just making sure you're all watching.
Go talk to Brad at the next conference, right?
That's exactly right. The solution is goodbye.
You only bill us a half hour.
A little more, but it's fine. It's all good. All right. So here's the solution. The solution is I want everyone now to think in terms of a services guide. Mm-hmm. A guide. Now, stay with me here. The solutions that any MSP provides, okay, the stack that they have, the security stack, whatever it is, they determine that stack based on factors that are only known to the MSP. For example, it might be because a solution has the right price point. It might be that it integrates well with other solutions. It might have a great interface in general. It doesn't really matter. The MSP has a reason for picking a particular vendor. But if you actually thought about the service that a vendor provides, there's a common denominator amongst all of them, right? If you want to look at security awareness training, there's a common denominator amongst all of them, right? 24/7 online on-demand videos that teach your employees the latest and greatest malware that might impact the company before it impacts the company. Mm-hmm. We're going to teach your employees how to recognize malware and bad actors, so on and so forth. That description fits almost every security awareness training program you could think of. So my point is, you can describe your services in a service-specific but vendor-agnostic way, right? Mm-hmm. So what if you had a guide? What if you had a guide of everything that you did? This is how we do backup. This is how we do security awareness. This is how we do endpoint. This is how we do MDR, XDR. This is how we do multi-factor in a vendor-agnostic way.
I was going to say that's really great stuff, and I think I don't want you to give too much of the secret sauce away, obviously, because this is why we brought you on. But I'll just give you a little example here of like what we do, right? So at our MSP, we have our services guide. We have how do we deal with account management, getting started, policies, legal, and this is all public, right on our website. They can come over here, they can look at it, they can read through it, and what it actually does for us as the MSP too is it gives us the opportunity to quickly answer questions when clients are like, what do you do for this? Okay, go read it. Or what do you do for that? Go read it. It helps speed up that sales process. It helps speed up that onboarding process by you know me, if it's not written down, it doesn't exist. And things that we are able to make public, we'll make it public. Here you go read it. And it frees up that sales cycle and other things as well.
Right. You know what? Not only that, you're 100% right. I agree with you. It's
did we record that so I can
agree with Tim? 100% right. I'll do a soundbite. Tim is 100% right. Okay. What else it does is it's a marketing tool in that
Mhm.
As they browse your catalog, they're going to see the other services you provide. Right. The same way that if you go to like Amazon.com, you're there to buy, I don't know, a pair of reading glasses. But while you're there, suddenly you see all this other stuff that, right? You're like,
Right.
oh, I could use that. Before you know it, you spent $100 on a $10 pair of glasses. So
Impulse buying.
impulse buying, I think impulse buying plays a part in the MSP industry. And I think that the catalog that you just showed, Tim, helps customers have some impulse buying. And that's a good thing.
Right. And not only does it help with that part, but it also brings credibility to your MSP, right?
Yeah.
Like, go look at our stuff. Like, you don't believe us? This is what we do, right? It is out there. It is in the public sphere. You can go find it and we can talk about it. So, and it brings that credibility. It brings that legitimacy. Now, the only caveat I would say with that is now your competitors can go look at it and build their own thing. Well, yeah. So, like, okay, fine, whatever. Like, the market's big enough. So,
but you know what? There's a strategy for that, because you could easily put that on a non-public link on your site and then direct clients to it, so they could see it, but your competitors can't.
Yeah.
Right.
I don't see it on too many, Tim. I mean, we look at a lot of, MSP.
And well, so this is what we were talking about, Tim. Remember at MSSP Alert Live, and I had a couple of people say, like, "Are you sure you want to put all that information in your presentation?" Yeah. Right? And I said, "Absolutely, I do, because that means I'm setting the market, and so everyone is doing it the way that I want it to be done, and that only helps to position me better, because the things that I'm saying are now becoming common consensus." And so I think there's something to that, of the way I think there's a shift in marketing right now, and the way we put things behind paywalls, or you got to put in an email, right, to get it. No, it's, we kind of just give it away, and execution is a whole nother thing. People have to come to us for that execution. And if you're the one setting the tone, you're the primary voice for that execution. So I think it's a different model, and that's less of an issue, in my opinion, at least, than it used to be. And I'm sure there's people that would disagree with that. But that's my take.
You're competing with 40,000 MSPs. It's not like it's not like an oligopoly when there's three companies out there. So
and I would say it's interesting. I was super stoked to hear you talk that way, Brad, about the services catalog kind of in the shorthand, because it's literally one of the core pieces that I do when I engage with MSPs to build out their security program. As I say, we create these phrases and these short bullet point descriptions of each service, so that if we need to switch out vendors behind the scenes on that, for whatever reason, we can do that. We don't have to change anything. It's the same in our MSA. It's templated the same in our scopes. And then we can feed those things into our risk assessments, right? Those line up with the way we do risk assessments. They line up with the way we deliver services.
Back in 2019, when I started to put together our sales deck, and I had bullets like security awareness training, and I had, next gen antivirus. I had things in our slide deck. I was forward thinking. I was doing what Jesse does. Where's our service? I didn't even know I was kind of doing it the right Power PSA Jesse way.
And it's exciting for me, because I've had several conversations over the last few months where I see more MSPs getting on board with that and becoming more intelligent. And like I said, people say, well, aren't you worried that, you'll become irrelevant? I'm like, no, because the more people doing it that way means the more people need help to get on board with doing it that way. And so I think
you can have no website.
Yeah.
How would that work out?
Right. Yeah, exactly. So anyways,
so, all right, Brad, I told you I was going to come to you with the questions, right? And so, as you know, as the compliance guy, as the risk guy, as the person that's trying to, like Jesse said, be that voice, bring that transformation, help MSPs do it right and not the wrong ways they've been doing it, right? And so things like Risk Register today, in my opinion, and maybe you would agree, MSPs own way too much risk right now. They own all the risk, right? So, when we always say, like, cyber insurance, we'll pick on cyber insurance, right? Does your client have MFA? Do they have backups? Do they have do they do these things? And maybe we as MSPs have been trying to get our clients to do that, and it falls on deaf ears or ignored. But we as MSPs own too much of the risk. And part of what we're trying to do, a compliance scorecard, is help shift that risk back to the client where it belongs. So maybe you could talk a little bit about like what that looks like.
So I think that as far as risk allocation is concerned, MSPs that operate without a contract or with a junky contract automatically have all the risk on them, right? Because they're the ones that are facilitating or providing the service, or at least have the appearance of providing a service. And so if bad things happen, the risk is going to be on the MSP, and it will be up to the MSP to prove otherwise. And that's an expensive endeavor. So we want to avoid that. As I started off by saying, the relationship between an MSP and its customer is a creature of contract. Okay. So risk allocation, if an MSP has too much risk on it, well, then shame on the MSP for having a crappy contract. Because if your contract is written correctly, it will not only allocate risk, it will explain the risk. So a customer can't turn around and say, this was some mumbo jumbo, I didn't even understand it. And I think that there are different strategies that can be implemented throughout the agreement to make it clear. For example, take a vendor, any vendor. We won't even mention a vendor. Just pick a vendor that does a backup solution. Okay. Is that
Carbonite.
vendor? What's that?
Carbonite.
There you go. There you go. Well, is the vendor HIPAA compliant? The answer is yeah. All these vendors are HIPAA compliant. Okay. So now the customer walks away thinking, well, Brad just told me I'm HIPAA compliant. No, Brad didn't tell you you're HIPAA compliant. Brad said the solution that we're providing or facilitating is compliant with HIPAA. But you should know, customer, that we are not providing you a regulatory solution or a compliance solution unless we specifically say that in a quote. Right. And I would go even further, and I often do, by saying things like, the solution that we provide is a step toward compliance, right? May aid you in your efforts to achieve compliance, but it's not a compliance solution and should not and cannot be treated as such. That's one of many provisions that you could put into an agreement that's very clear. So nobody could turn around and say, I thought I was HIPAA compliant. Why am I getting fined after this audit? You're getting fined because we didn't provide you with a HIPAA compliant solution.
Right.
Yeah, and so the nuance of words, right? You know, as the guy that lives in the documentation world, the nuance of words, right? Oh, the solution is no. In their mind, oh, we're compliant, and I hear this a lot, right? Because I do a lot of work with covered entities, and they talk about, oh, we're HIPAA compliant. Well, first and foremost, HIPAA compliant isn't really a badge. So we won't even go down that road. But,
Right.
but
high trust compliant.
High trust is a little different, but they don't even know what high trust is. They think, can of worms. But the point is that as MSPs build out their agreements, they build out their packaging and their service offerings, this nuance of word is very important, right? Because the more, and what I'm hearing from you, Brad, is the more explicit we can be, the better defensible we are and they are when boom happens.
That's right.
And so
exactly right.
We always talk about helping MSPs shift left of boom, get prepared, right? And so part of that conversation is, go hit up Brad, or, find the lawyer like Brad. Hopefully, you pick Brad that can help you with that nuance of word.
Agreed. And it's very important because what an MSP will often do is they will see a document online, they'll take it and they think, oh, because these words are written in big bold letters or capitalized, I'm protected. Right? You're not protected. There's a nuance to how these things have to be written. And in order to understand how to write them, the attorney, whether it's me or anyone else, the attorney has to understand the industry. Right? Has to understand the solution providers, what their limits are, what the parameters are, and then draft documents accordingly. You can't just go to any, attorney that understands how to write a contract and they'll write, I'm going to provide a service and you're going to pay me. And if you don't, I could suspend my service and my liability is limited. Okay. That's the kind of stuff that paid for my kids' college tuition. It's not what you want to have.
It's not. But unfortunately, in this day and age, right, a lot of people are going after cyber insurance. And I feel like I should just shut the hell up because Jesse and Tim are like, hey, give me a chance. But, cyber insurance is asking for this stuff. Boom will happen. If you don't get protected on the right side of boom or the left side of boom with stuff like Brad, with policies and procedures to back that up, when you're standing in front of your jury of your peers or your insurance company
or arbitrator,
they're going to do everything that they can find, which won't be very hard to do, to say, too bad.
Yeah.
That's right.
So this leads to exactly the question that I wanted to get answered for our audience today. So I'm gonna drop this to you, Brad, and I'll just let you kind of rattle off some things here. Obviously, you've probably looked at a lot of bad contracts, right? So I'd like to hear from you just off the top of your head. And there's probably MSPs watching like, I feel like maybe I'm not getting the best advice. I'm not sure. How do I know? What are some things that they can look out for or some things in their MSA that they should be aware of to say, hey, there's a problem. I should get this looked at, right? What have you seen as things that, hey, that's a red flag. You should maybe think about changing legal counsel.
So there are a couple of things. For some are legal, some are more situational. Here's a legal one. Okay. Very often you'll see a contract that says our liability is limited to the amounts that have been that are payable under this agreement, right? Our liability is limited to amounts that are payable for the service at issue, something like that. And you think, oh, well, now my liability is limited, right? Because unless I do something maliciously, my liability is limited to whatever's payable under the service. That makes no sense. What I just said makes no sense, and here's why. Let's say that, Jesse, you are my service provider, and I'm giving you $2,000 a month under our agreement. And 6 months pass, and you mess up. What's your potential liability? Well, it's the amounts payable under the agreement. Well, I've given you $12,000. Okay. Well, how about if you've been my provider for 3 years?
Right.
Now it's 36. It actually keeps going up. The longer that you work with me, it's payable under the agreement. And what is payable? What's the limit? I planned on being with you for 10 years at $2,000 a month. Do the math. There's language out there that you think, oh, I'm protected, but you're not. MSPs, for example, suffer from contracts that neglect to have attorney's fees provisions in them. Something as simple as whoever wins the lawsuit or the arbitration is entitled to their attorney's fees. Here's a little secret that's unfortunately found out by a lot of MSPs when it's too late. Unless your agreement specifically says, if there's a problem and we have to litigate or arbitrate, whoever wins gets its attorney's fees and costs. Unless it says that, if you win, you do not get your attorney's fees. Period. Now you could say, but wait a minute. Not only did I sue them, they didn't even show up. I got a default against them for 20 grand. Good. That's what you're recovering. But my attorney cost me 50. That's the problem. There are a lot of little things in these agreements. So I think that MSPs have to be on the lookout for legal things for sure, but also, and I can't stress this enough, reality. Right? Now, what do I mean by that? I mean, what happens? Okay. Think about, and I'm talking to whoever is watching this in MSP. What happens if a client doesn't listen to you? Right. And then the bad thing happens. Okay. Now what? Now the bad thing happens and the client blames you. Here, I'm pointing right at the MSP who's watching. You. And you're going to turn around and say, but wait, I told them what to do. They didn't listen to me. Show me where in your agreement it says they have to listen to you.
Right. That's a great point.
Right.
Even with the RIC register, right? I mean, there's still.
You have to say we're not exactly. There needs to be some language that says, hey, we're going to show you your risk, and if you choose not to take action, that's on you, basically.
So you bring up an interesting point, right? So I mean, we recognize it took me a couple of months to get our agreements together, right? Because we wanted to make sure our part, like not a couple of months because of Brad, a couple of months because of what we were doing and how we wanted to do it. But once we got them in place, then we realized we forgot a couple of pieces. So that back and forth. Once you get your agreements in place, now I have a leg to stand on when I choose to work with a client, right? I'm not just going to pick anybody because I want the money. I'm going to choose to work with the client. And then I'm going to explain to the client and set that expectation up front. Like, this is how we do business. You want to work with us. We want to work with you. We want to build relationships. We don't want to do all that fun, kumbaya stuff. But at the end of the day, this is how we operate. You get 2FA, you get this, you get this, you get this, you get that. And anything that is not in this little bucket that we're talking about, not my problem. However, we set a minimum standards for computers. It needs to have this level of processor, this amount of RAM, this amount of hard drive space, like all the way down to that kind of detail. Because, we go in, we do an assessment, we find 30 Windows XP machines, and I'm like, uh-oh. Now I can go back to my agreement. I've built that relationship with them, and I can go back to the agreement and say, listen, you agreed, this is what we're going to adhere to. You don't want to do it, that's fine. We'll walk away. We'll give you your onboarding feedback and we'll walk away. No problem. And so we're at that point not owning that risk. And it's not because we're the big bad no people. Our job is to protect us and your business. And by the way, all of our other clients' businesses too.
That's right. And I would add that, you're 100% right. You're protecting yourself. You're taking control of the relationship. Very important. And you're doing it by, among other things, like you just said, protecting yourself. When you get on the plane and they say, in case of pressure drops, the mask drops down, right? What do they always tell you? Put yours on first. Right? Put yours on first. Then you put it on, whichever child you love the most. But that's another part. But the idea is, if you don't protect yourself first, you're not going to be able to protect anyone else. You have to think about protecting your company.
Yeah, and I think there's something to be said too with that whole discussion. Is it changes the dynamic because the leverage is all in the right place. So if a customer is able to, or if a customer sees you willing to walk away from a deal because it's that serious, and you have the contractual language to do that, all of a sudden you have the leverage, and they say, okay, there's something to this. Like, maybe we should do something about this risk after all this time. So I think obviously there has to be tact. There has to be an attitude of shepherdship. Shepherdship. I don't know if that's the right word, but for the client. But I think at the end of the day, it does help. The leverage being in the right place does facilitate the discussion happening in a much more fruitful manner.
Right. The power of no.
Yeah.
When you have the leverage to do that, right? That's, I think, very, very important.
So shifting topics here a little bit, and Brad, you've a lot of enlightenment on SROs, and we know that outsourced IT, outsourced security, MSPs, right? It's the Wild West, right? I mean, lawyers have the bar, accountants have the AICPA, like banks are regulated, and we're in this area, right, where there's massive losses, and cybersecurity insurance is like, I don't know, like not really insurance, right? Like if it's got massive carve-outs. Yes or no? So kind of like, what are your thoughts? Like, where are things going? I mean, do we see like regulation coming down? I mean, there's a lot of bad ideas I've seen thrown out. So,
well, your point is a good one, and it's been discussed in a lot of different venues. In fact, I sit on CompTIA's cybersecurity council. We've discussed it in that venue as well. There you go, Tim. Right, this. We've discussed the fact that it seems like anyone's just hanging up a shingle and changing that MSP, and they put a little caret MSSP. What? How can you do that?
How many hours have we spent at CompTIA trying to define the differences between an MSP and an MSSP? And I keep seeing more and more variations of it across LinkedIn and Facebook and Reddit, and stop. People, stop.
I agree. I don't know how many hours it was, because I think after like the 4th hour, I set myself on fire. I don't remember it after that. It all went
blank. To walk away. Exactly.
I smelled toast and I passed out, and that was it. But the idea, okay, is where will it go? I don't know. Where should it go? It should go to the concept of some sort of self-regulated organization. Right? Like you said, the bar, that's self-regulated organization. The AICPA, I think that the industry is clamoring for some standards from an organization that has credibility, that can offer things that are achievable, reasonable, but eliminate the junk, right? Eliminate the crap. And I think that that's probably where we're going to end up going. And I think that that's where we should go.
Yeah, the trust marker, like something like that, where hopefully they embrace it, right? Like MSPs, and it's really the customers, not the MSPs. The MSPs are trying to achieve it, trying to evidence their worthiness to the customers. So, but obviously it's just such a fractured industry, right? There's 45,000 of these companies out there trying to serve businesses. So it's like, and every time I hear some kind of like regulatory suggestion, it's like, oh, MSPs can get insurance from the government. I'm like, that doesn't sound like it has legs. So just, I was really kind of trying to pick your mind, like, where do you think where will they end up, right? Like,
well,
say if we had an Office 365 outage, right, for like a week or something. I don't know where the chips would fall, but we've teetered on these like very big, that company that Tim mentioned, which starts with a K, like, we've teetered on these incidences. Robert Chiaffi, like, I've seen his spiel like 3 times, and it just hits me every time. It's like, oh my God, his life savings are gone, right? Like in a heartbeat. So
well, I'll tell you this. I'll tell you where I think it'll go long term. In the short term, where it's going to go is it's going to go wherever the insurance companies want it to go. That's the short term. Okay. The insurance companies have become a lot more savvy about the services that MSPs provide and don't provide, and the limitations and the parameters of those services. So it is now not unusual for an MSP to receive an underwriting document that requires it not only to identify specific vendors and specific services, but to almost make it its own evaluation about what its own weaknesses are, where its gaps are, and so on. That was unheard of 5, 6, 7 years ago. I mean, nobody ever received an insurance underwriting form that said, name the vendor that you use for endpoint solutions.
Yeah.
What? That's never, but now they do. And now they're starting to base premiums on your vendors, right? On the solutions that you're providing. So I think that right now, short term, if you want insurance and you want to stay insured, and unfortunately a lot of MSPs are not insured, which is another topic for another discussion, that just is freaky. It's freaky how many are uninsured or underinsured. But I think short-term insurance companies are going to decide it.
So you're talking about insurance, MSPs either being under or not insured at all. What we have seen in our MSP, 3, 4, 5 years ago, don't quote me on the number, but we had some government contracts, and they wanted a $5 million policy, right? For tech E&O, for cyber, right? Good luck trying to get a $5 million policy today from a single carrier. I guarantee you won't. I bet the max you might be able to get is 2.5, which means now for us MSPs that want to work with defense contractors, and the defense says you need $5 million in coverage, I have to go to 2 carriers
and get them
pay twice. And pay twice, and have 2 what could be competing insurance carriers and insurance stuff, right? Because they're asking for it. And by the way, it is not cheap, right? A couple years ago, like, the price is doubled, tripled, quadrupled, and the coverage has come down.
Yeah, I don't think it's viable either. I mean, they're just so scared right now. So, like, baby's going out with the bathwater. Like, even if you're a good risk, you're not getting a reasonable policy. So it's like, you can remediate risk, you can transfer risk through insurance, but it sounds like the default, as Tim's been saying, is you're going to accept most of the risk whether you know it or not. So in terms of CompTIA, I just had one other question. Is there MSA guidance and kind of best practices at all? Do you guys delve into that? Because as I said, it's like they're accepting the risk by default, whether they know it or not right now. So like Brad comes to the rescue because he's doing a great job, you know, as I said, either setting expectations or putting it in paper on, you know, how do I meet that bar of, I don't know what it is, prudent man or whatever, what's like a, you know,
Reasonable
best,
person.
yeah, reasonable efforts, right? So is that something you guys do, like Brad? Is there a CompTIA initiative around that as well? Like,
Well, I can't speak for CompTIA. I'm not joking about it. I mean, I can't speak for CompTIA. I can tell you that I'm not involved with their or any other organization's templated type documents.
You just gave me PTSD. You used the word template.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
Well, I'll tell you. I mean, hey, if CompTIA is listening, call me. All right, Todd, call me. But you know, from my perspective, whether you're talking about CompTIA or any organization, industry consortium, and there are a lot of great ones out there, and a lot of people give out you know, sort of standardized templates that you'd say, oh, I could use this, I could run with this, whether it's CompTIA or you know, our friends at Tech Tribe or any of these consortiums. I don't think that any of them, okay, any of these consortiums intend for you to take their documents and say, this is it, I'm installing it, and this is my document. All of them will tell you, have this reviewed. This is something that gets you off the ground, that gets you moving, that gets you thinking about what's out there.
Exactly.
But none of those organizations will say, yeah, take this, you're good to
and
go.
you're good.
Yeah,
no,
you're good.
I mean, we do that with us, right? And so, you know, you gave me PTSD when you said the T word. So here's the thing, like,
you're in a happy
hire the right person for the right job. I've said this millions of times in my life. I would never hire a plumber to do my electrical work. Can a plumber pull wire through a wall just like he does pipe? Right? I would never hire the plumber to do the electrical work because, shocking, we might burn the house down.
Right.
So you hire the right person, the right tool for the right job.
That's exactly
all
right.
right.
But
so
I think,
we're coming up
there again,
close.
to be fair to those consortiums, I don't think any of them preach the gospel of we're going to give you an agreement and you're set, you're good to go. So, you know, to be fair to both sides. But I think that your point is a good one. A lot of MSPs don't think in those terms. They take the document, they think, oh, I got it from this great, you know, group, I could probably use it. No, you should listen to the consortium that's telling you, have it reviewed for sure.
Yeah, period. I totally agree. So we're coming up on the last 5 or 6 minutes here. We typically try to go around the room and have everybody leave off with, you know, one key takeaway. And looks like Mr. Tim, you're up first.
I think what you just said about electrician or plumber, I think it gets even a little more specific, right? I'm not hiring a family attorney or, you know, there's different attorneys, right? They're not all the same, right? You're not hiring Brad necessarily to do, you know,
bankruptcy.
Yeah, right. Bankruptcy. So there's not a lot of people like Brad, and I think it's great. And I think we really nailed it on how much risk they are accepting, as Tim said. So, you know, a lot of things to think about, and everyone should just go back. Key takeaway is go look at those, you know, MSAs again, and split them up, as you said. You want to be able to reuse that MSA and then have the quotes on top of it. So.
Yep.
Exactly. All right, Mr. Jesse. Key takeaway.
All right. I have two. Well, maybe the same, but two different approaches. So I talk to a lot of just getting started MSPs or small MSPs, and I ask them, I have a set of questions that I ask them, right? And one of them is, how's your MSA set up? Do you have an MSA in place? And some of them say, no, we don't have one, or we got one from the consortium. And I say, that's like the first thing you need to fix. And I'll hear things like, oh, when we get a little bit more mature, we'll look at that. I'm like, if you can't spend a couple $1,000s to get that thing customized and tightened up, you shouldn't be starting an MSP, right? So that's the one side of the aisle. And then there's the other side that I've been a part of, is a larger MSP who it's such a monolith to get some things in the MSA changed, because you have to go back to every client, get it re-signed, and it's a whole process. So that's painful. But the amount of risk that you're taking on by ignoring that is more painful in the end than the amount of risk that it will take to take action and start making those changes. So I think don't ignore that. Get that on the roadmap for 2024 and get it done. So those would be my 2 takeaways.
Awesome. Thank you for that. And my key takeaway for today is figure out how to transfer that risk back to the client where it belongs and it rightfully should be. And that can start with your agreements, your statements of work, your master service agreement with people like Brad in your back pocket helping you. So my key takeaway, shift that risk back to the client and protect yourself. Brad, what about you, my friend?
I would say I agree with you that risk allocation is crucial, especially in the area of compliance and regulatory work. So that is, I'm not going to repeat what you said. I'm just going to say ditto. The other takeaway that I think everyone should remember is that you have to manage your customers' expectations. Do not assume that your customers understand the scope and parameters and the limitations of the services you're providing. Spell it out. Spell it out like we talked about earlier, a reasonable person, a person who is your customer. Spell it out for that person, not for your technician that's helping facilitate it. Spell it out, manage expectations, and you will avoid attorneys and litigation and legal costs. And that's what it's all about.
Awesome. So I have another little key takeaway, at least for me personally. Brad must have said, Tim, you're right, at least a half a dozen times. So
I'll do it again. I did the meme, right? Tim, you are right.
Nice. So I'm just I'm like, hey, honey,
that is the voice of God. If you've seen Hard Knocks,
I know if I talk close to the microphone.
Schreiber over here, he's got it nailed.
Perfect. So I'm just going to take this. I'm going to send it off to my wife and my family, and I'm going to be like, hey, we had a really great session with Brad today. It's something that you ought to listen to because it's really helpful to understand that there's risk involved. So,
and what's your wife's name? What's her first name?
Maureen.
Maureen. Tim is right.
You're not invited over ever again.
I'm helping.
I love it. You know what she's going to do when she sees you at IT Nation in a couple of weeks? She's going to be like, seriously? So speaking of IT,
she's going to make me record another one going, Maureen, you're right. That's what she's going to make me do.
Great. So now we're going to have dueling your rights in our house. I can just see the memes my kids are going to make.
A little easy button. You hit the button. Tim
yeah.
Right.
Oh, wait. So I have one of those. Hold on. It's turned off. I have one of those, right? So see the Yahoo? I don't know if you can hear it, but it goes, Yahoo! So now I just need to change it to be like, Tim is right. So, hey, speaking of IT Nation, hey, Mr. Tim, can you talk a little bit about what we got coming up in our last minute and a half here?
Yeah, absolutely. So IT Nation, November 9th, the Thursday, 3:30 session. Team Tim here, Kyle Christensen, K7 Leadership. We're going to be talking, and my boss, James McNaka, will also be on talking cybersecurity metrics that matter to non-technical business owners. I was at a conference yesterday. I asked this question to literally everyone I saw. So really excited for that. Next week as well, Tim, we have Cyber 74 and Newspire, Maria Graham and Gustavo. I'm blanking on his last name. We're going to talk about governance, one of your favorite subjects, NIST 2.0, and cybersecurity programs, not tools. So that's coming up next week.
All right. So for those of you that are attending IT Nation, make sure you come on the 7th at 3:30.
Right? The 9th at 3:30. And we'll be wearing the shirts, you know.
So come at 3 on the get that number. Get the number.
Thursday.
So on Thursday at IT Nation, make sure you come to our session. You can come heckle us live in person, shake our hands, pat us on the back, give us the like, the thumbs up, whatever. But you can actually hear some really good conversation around KPIs that matter, things that our non-technical people need to hear about, right? And so we're very excited. We'll see you there at IT Nation. And next week, my favorite subject, governance. okay, shameless plug, as the only governance as a service platform here at Compliance Scorecard. We're super excited. Okay, yeah, I know, shameless plug. That's it for this week, everybody. Thank you so much. And wait, we have this new little exit. So we'll see you all soon.
Subscribe now.
Awesome.
Wow.
We're still live.
I'm going to hear that in my dreams tonight. That was
I
good.
feel like
Wait,
Brad
we're
did
still
that. Did you get
streaming.
Brad to
I'm ending
record
the
that?
stream.